I direct two weekly Scrabble clubs, one in Mississauga and one in Brampton. It's a small way of giving back to the community. Through Scrabble, people get together, they play a game, people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ages, and they sit together and they get to play a game, learn a bit, and get to know each other. Players often come to Scrabble from different situations. One player was a recent widow and was using it to cope with her loss by playing with the new players and being able to think about other things. For another player, he had recovered recently from a stroke, and that the game itself helped him with his recovery because he was able to rebuild his speaking and spelling abilities.
Very lucky to have Sean as leading our Scrabble club here, because we know that he helps out a lot in the community.
Welcome back to our final segment of I Care, I Volunteer. I'm Taylor Lewis, still here with Corrine Strong and Robert Crocker. So we were talking about the Peel Cares campaign, and you did a great job of explaining that to our youth and our Peel region. Now, Robert, as someone who's closely associated with youth in our region, how do you think that this campaign can motivate these youth to volunteer?
Well, we really need to start them young, and so I'll put in this little plug. And a lot of people don't understand this, but you can start working on your 40 volunteer hours as a young person in the summer before you start grade 9. And we encourage kids to get their 40 hours in as soon as they can for two reasons, really. One is to hammer away at my idea about changing the culture around volunteering, so it becomes a habit and not a chore. But the other one is because the senior years of high school can be pretty busy with other things. And it's a shame when we have to be chasing kids about their 40 hours, and that's because that stands in the way of their graduating. I can say this as well. When you're on the ground yourself, as I am at Eden Food for Change, which is more than just a food bank, but my end of it's food bank, I have the lucky task of helping people carry their food out, which is hard work, but they always, always, always say thank you. Mm-hmm. And you get a real sense of both the need and the gratitude which exists in our community. So this is good work.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that youth need some sort of recognition, I feel, for volunteering? Because I feel like that's a big part on why youth don't necessarily volunteer, because you said earlier as well they need something from it. So how do you feel
Robert said it as well, that they need something that is going to set them apart from the competition, because ultimately they're hopefully all going to graduate with the same degree. So what is going to set them a part, and it will be there to be able to demonstrate their volunteer experience. And we have a great program for that. It's called Achieve, and I know we're going to be talking that at a later show about that. But yes, absolutely. And then we also have our Voskers coming up, which is also a great way to celebrate, and we're going to talk about that on a future show as well. So absolutely, it's imperative that we recognize the contributions that they make. They really look for that.
Now, I know we were speaking during the break a little bit about how youth can virtually volunteer. So explain that a little bit more for us.
So we have actually at Volunteer NBC, and some of our members too have a few roles where you know, kids have such incredible talent, and you know, they may be really good at designing a website. Well, budgets of a small nonprofit organization, that's just not there. Or you know, they can be really good at graphic design, photography, music, and you know, it can be incorporated into a really meaningful volunteer role that can absolutely be done virtually. You know, some entering of doing research online, those kinds of things. I think it's just up to the organizations to really make sure that they make it meaningful, that they include them, even though they're virtual, that they include them as part of their volunteer group.
So families and groups, we were talking about how it's great to volunteer as a family or in a group of friends. In the Peel Cares campaign, is there a way for them to do it together?
Absolutely. You know, if there's so many activities coming up, even to celebrate Canada 150, that they can volunteer together. You know, handing out water bottles at a marathon, or in the Mississauga Marathon, for instance, that can be you know, a great experience. Or we have a father and a daughter that go to a food bank in Brampton, and they volunteer there together, and it's a great opportunity for them to bond. And you know, time is so precious, and if we can make it meaningful by bringing families together and getting them to do something together, as opposed to maybe going to Canada Wonderland, or I'm not saying anything against Canada Wonderland, but you know, the idea of doing something together that you know, you all come back feeling really, really good about your accomplishments.
Now, do you both volunteer with your families and get them involved as well? Will you be getting them involved?
Well, I can say it was my daughter who, after I retired, said, "Dad, I'm going to hook you up with these people at Eden, and you'll like this." So yeah, there's a lot of family connections. And if I can just go back to you about the thanks thing, the recognition, you're absolutely right. You just nailed that. And we do take volunteers for granted. Now, I'll give the example of the hockey coach or the volleyball coach. You know, parents tend to be in contact with the coach because the kid isn't getting enough playing time or something like that. It isn't usually because they're phoning up to thank you for giving their time and applying their skills. So that's something I think for all people to remember. Thank the people who are helping you.
Thank them. Yeah, that's really interesting. And what about you?
So my daughter is a teacher in an elementary school teacher, and I just have a little granddaughter that's only 18 months old. So, but absolutely, my daughter does so much volunteering, and absolutely, I would love to bring them and get them involved. She's just a little bit too small right now.
What would you say is the most rewarding experience of both your volunteer careers?
Well, I think it's we were talking about earlier, the sense of community, which should always be there and really is there, but we don't always know about it. When I first started working in the food bank, it was several weeks before I sort of clued in. Well, these people who I've got this friendly relationship with, they've had really horrible experiences. You know, they're here in the food bank because they're desperate, and yet they're my neighbors, and we live in the same community. We have all the same needs and interests and so on. And sort of understanding that we're all one. And working together with the community of volunteers is also very rewarding. You make friends, and you make friends that you know you share values with.
So I want to thank you both, Karine and Robert, for a great show today. That's all we have for today's episode of I Care, I Volunteer. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Don't go anywhere. Bye.